Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to begin the meeting with a short prayer and a salute to our flag. Almighty God, grant us the wisdom to make those decisions that are in the best interest of all our residents. May the Heavenly Father of us all bless those who have given the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation, and may He watch over and protect our service men and women now guarding the gates of freedom. Salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless you.
Terry, statement of publication, please.
Take notice that this regular meeting of the mayor and council being held on this 27th day of November 2017 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan.
Here.
Grillo.
Here.
Kilpatrick.
Here.
Lembo.
Here.
Melendez.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Council President, approval of prior minutes.
Mayor, I move the following minutes be approved subject to correction. The October 23rd, 2017 council agenda session and executive session.
Second.
Chief, if you...
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call on the minutes.
Councilpersons Buchanan.
Yes.
Grillo.
Yes.
Kilpatrick.
Yes.
Lembo. Melendez.
Yes.
Novak.
Yes.
Chief, if you would, please come forward with Mr. Delgado.
Good evening, Mayor and Council again. And again, it's so wonderful to see so many of our young men and women in blue and gray and blue and white here this evening. I know you're not here to see us get our accreditation, but I wish you luck on what's coming up afterwards. And I'm so glad to see that you're taking interest in a process that's so important to you, and it will be as you grow up into wonderful adult young wonderful young men and women. Tonight, we have our presentation that we spoke about 2 weeks ago, and that is the recertification, reaccreditation of our police department. So I'm going to turn it over to Harry Delgado, who is the director of the accreditation process for the New Jersey State Association Chiefs of Police.
Chief, thank you. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to recognize your police department as one of the best police departments in the state of New Jersey, and I do bring proof. Arguably one of the best
Mr.
in the nation.
Delgado, if you
Yes.
could hold it closer.
Arguably one of the best in the nation. So just to add context to what I'm about to share with you about the police department, there's over 470 police departments in the state of New Jersey that would be eligible to apply for accreditation. To date, it's only about 180 that have successfully made it through the process. That's one time. In the case of the Saraville Police Department, they've done it twice. So you figure that about 34% of agencies in the state have made it once. Those that have made it twice are less than 9% of all the law enforcement agencies in the state of New Jersey. So it's quite a privilege. It's quite an elite group. So if you indulge me for 2 minutes, I'd like to share with you what accreditation is all about. Accreditation is a process. The foundation of accreditation lies in the adoption of standards containing a clear statement of professional objectives. Accreditation is a progressive and time-proven way of helping law enforcement agencies calculate and improve their overall performances. It is a certification by an independent reviewing authority, in this case the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police, that the accredited agency was carefully measured against an established set of state and national standards and has met or exceeded, as in the case of the Saraville Police Department, accepted practices in the field of law enforcement. There's certainly plenty of information here for taxpayers. I know that some people simply ask what's in it for me. So there's a lot of research provided to us by the insurance companies that state that accredited agencies have 11% fewer police professional liability claims, 18% fewer worker compensation claims, and 31% fewer auto liability claims. Moreover, municipalities that participate in a male-affiliated joint insurance fund stand to receive substantial insurance premium discounts. But in addition to the fiscal advantages, there are other very important benefits of accreditation. The accredited agencies are better able to defend against lawsuits and citizen complaints. Accreditation provides objective evidence of an agency's commitment to excellence in leadership, resource management, and service delivery. Government officials can be more confident in the agency's ability to operate efficiently and meet community needs. And accreditation embodies, as the Chief was sharing with the audience here tonight, the process of community-oriented policing. It creates a forum in which police and citizens work together to prevent and control challenges confronting law enforcement and provide clear expectation about community expectations. Accreditation standards give to Chief a proven management system or written directives, sound training, clearly defined lines of authority, and routine reports that support decision-making and resource allocation. And finally, officers in accredited agencies are able to take pride that they have been objectively recognized for their professionalism and adherence to the highest standards. I'd just like to share one more bit of information. At the end of this process, which in this, the second time around takes 3 years to complete, there's a report that is generated, and in it, examples of exemplary performance are included. And I'll just paraphrase for you some of what the assessors share with us after that visit. It takes 2 days. And in it, we make sure that we thoroughly look at all the items of compliance that the police department needs to show, tangible items of compliance, to make sure that they're in compliance with 105 standards in the state of New Jersey. So they wrote, last year, the Sayreville Police Department had to deal with the tragic loss of one of their own, perhaps the most difficult situation that an agency and its personnel can face. Although unexpected, tragic, and extremely sad, the men and women of the Sayreville Police Department persevered. Under the leadership of Chief Zabrowski and his command staff, the NGs demonstrated not only sound leadership but also resiliency. Through this difficult time and beyond, they led by example, demonstrating empathy, competence, honesty, and integrity. Furthermore, all the members of the Sayreville Police Department, drawing from his mantra, honor, integrity, and professionalism, endeavor to remain a key resource for the entire community, and they strive to provide timely and effective assistance whenever needed to every citizen in this community. The high level of competence, leadership, and professionalism is evident within the agency. Officers are forward-thinking and engaged in self-improvement. Another thing that is truly remarkable is that we leave no turn on stone, in plain English, when we come for that final on-site assessment. And we found no issues whatsoever in the examination of the proofs of compliance for the Sayreville Police Department. So that is truly remarkable, because only a small percentage of law enforcement agencies can make it through accreditation without showing a thing or two, if you will. Therefore, the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police and the New Jersey Law Enforcement Commission congratulates Chief John Zabrowski, Accreditation Manager Lieutenant David Erla, the members of the Sayreville Police Department, the Mayor and Council, and those citizens that they so proudly serve for achieving state reaccreditation, joining a very exclusive group of law enforcement agencies that have made this important commitment to excellence in policing. So to all the Chief Council, congratulations.
And I just want to say that we humbly accept that. And I humbly accept that on behalf of everyone associated with the police department, from the custodial staff to our clerks, to our communication officers, to all our sworn officers. It's a team effort, just like you guys know, right? Everybody has to work together because there's no I in team, right? Everybody has that effort. And perhaps maybe I'm the manager, but I've got the best coaches around too, because these guys know every strategy and how to win. And we wouldn't have done this without these two guys. Captain Plumacher, who was our original accreditation manager, and Lieutenant Erla, who took the reins and really ran with it as well. So I'm just, again, proud on behalf of the department and these guys for all their work. Thank you.
Congratulations, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Delgado. Before we go to the ordinances, I have a letter from Sayreville VFW Memorial Post 4699. It reads, "Greetings to all. Please be advised that the Sayreville Veterans Alliance VFW Post 4699 and American Legion Post 211 will be conducting a ceremony in remembrance of the 76th anniversary of the attack at Pearl Harbor. The ceremony will be held on December 7th, 2017 at Buchanan Waterfront Park on River Road." It's the boat ramp. at 7:48 a.m., rain or shine. All members of the governing body are cordially invited to attend. If attending, please be at the park by 7:30. The general public is also invited and encouraged to attend. So I will have Terry post this on our television, but I think it's important that we remember who we are, where we came from, and what we stand for. And with that, I'll go to the first order of business.
Public hearing on the following ordinances. Ordinance number 381-17, an ordinance supplementing and amending ordinance number 258-14, fixing the salaries of certain borough officials, officers, and employees for the years 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016.
This time, I'm going to open the public portion for any questions or comments on this ordinance. Are there questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Councilwoman Novak.
I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Buchanan,
Yes.
Grillo,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Lembo, Melendez.
Yes.
Next item.
Public hearing on ordinance number 382-17, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 12 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Sayreville to amend Section 12.6 rent control.
This time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments on this ordinance. Other questions or comments? There being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Councilwoman Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Buchanan,
Yes.
Grillo,
Yes.
Lembo, Melendez,
Yes.
Novak.
Next item.
Public hearing on ordinance number 383-17, bond ordinance providing for the construction and installation of 2 turf fields in the Borough of Sayreville, New Jersey, authorizing the issuance of $2,565,000 bonds or notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation.
At this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square. Can you please tell us all what's included in this?
Dan?
This is actually the turf fields. This is both at the Kennedy Park War Memorial and also at the soccer field. This is all, Borough Park, I'm sorry, Kennedy Park. This is also for renovations of some of the buildings for bathrooms, parking lots, parking lot improvements, lighting. That's basically it.
Are there any other questions or comments on this ordinance? By the way, all of you with homework, this is why you came tonight, for this ordinance. John Walsh, you had your hand up. Why don't you-
Thank you. I would just like to, John Walsh, I would just like to thank again the mayor and council for their hard work. This is going to make a big difference in the children's lives. You can see a lot of blue and gray here. And it was really good to hear the chief talking up here about team. And I was lucky enough to play with Officer Plumacher on these very same fields, and they looked exactly the same way they do look now. Well, a little better than the same field. So it's long overdue, and I'm sure if you talk to Officer Plumacher, the reason we have such great people who grew up in our town and continue to give to our town, I'm sure, I didn't want to put him on the spot, but if you talk to him, he would tell you the lessons he learned growing up in town, playing sports, learning about discipline and pride and hard work, all the things that Sayreville stands for. So I couldn't be more thankful for the council and the mayor investing in our children. So again, thank you, and it's going to be a good day for Sayreville.
Thank you, John. Would anyone from the Soccer Association of any age like to come up? There we go.
You guys want to come up? No, you're mine.
Come on up. Come on up.
Come here, guys. So these 2 are actually mine. They came through the rec program. They started as micros, the little ones. U10, U8, U9, She's on my U10 team. We have some more here. I can't stress enough the importance of these fields. And I know I hit it in some numbers last time. We have over 550 children in the program in the fall alone. We do go spring and fall. 300.
And your name for the record?
Mary Ellen Dunn, president of Cerebral Soccer.
Okay.
We do have over 350 games a year up there. That's a lot of little feet. That's games alone. That's not including practice, tournaments, festivals, anything that we hold back there. Safety is a major concern on those fields. We're doing fundraising efforts on our own. That's our indoor program. We're going to try to maintain field 1 through 5 as we can, but to scrape it alone is $42,000 for one field. So a turf field is a huge, huge win for us. Safety, number one concern for the kids. So anything you guys can do for us, you're looking at these faces, this is who's going to be using it. And football too, because it's important for all the kids in Cerebral. They play all sports. So, and you guys want to say anything? You want to say thank you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions or comments on this ordinance? There being no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
Before we go there, a thank you to Councilman Melendez, who coordinated the funding from the county. And with that, Ricky, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank my colleagues up here for believing in this dream, and obviously the parents who were very vocal in what they want, and there's many more to come. We do this every Monday. You guys can come to this meeting and get more things. But I appreciate the effort from everyone, from Jay, and of course Middlesex County for awarding the grant. And why not Cerebral? That was the first thing we said the first day. You guys all travel, you go to different places. It's our turn. Why not us? So I'm real excited that this is happening today.
Thank you. Roll call?
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Buchanan,
Yes.
Grillo,
Yes, and I want to recognize Councilman Melendez. This was certainly no small feat, so congratulations and work well done.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Lembo, Melendez.
Absolutely yes.
All right, kids. Christmas came early. So that's it, if you want to bring them home. It's all done. We voted on, the money is allocated. So we thank you for coming out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, with that, we'll go on to new business.
Introduction of the following ordinances. Ordinance number 384-17, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Fire Department of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Saraville.
Councilman Grillo?
Thank you, Mayor. I move the ordinance be approved on first reading, advertised according to law, and at a public hearing to be held on December 18th, 2017.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Grillo,
Yes.
Buchanan,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Lembo, Melendez.
Yes.
Novak.
Yes.
Ordinance number 385-17, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 19 of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Saraville to amend Chapter 19 swimming pools.
Councilman Lembo?
Yes, Mayor. Councilman Gruel, was this something the Board of Health was working on?
Yeah, I think there's
Did
just
you
a-
want to take this?
Yeah, there's a minor error on the agenda. This is from the Board of Health. And so there's also another minor error on the actual ordinance, which I discussed with Terry. Assuming that nobody has an objection, if you have it in front of you, 19-2.3, letter C, the ordinance should read that there's a one-time $50 initial inspection fee and then a $25 fee per inspection. The $50 fee is omitted. I think it's just a minor error, but if no one has any objection, I'd like to advance this tonight with the correction made for next time.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's a $50 one-time.
It's initial $50 fee and then a $25 fee if there's a failed initial inspection. And then it's $25 every time. So now I have to read that I move that the ordinance be approved on first reading, advertised according to law, and a public hearing to be held on December 18th, 2017.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Grillo?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Next item?
Ordinance number 386-17, an ordinance of the Borough of Sayreville in the County of Middlesex, New Jersey, supplementing and amending ordinance number 364-17 to Chapter 26, Section 26-111, entitled Development Fee Ordinance of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Sayreville.
Councilman Lumbo?
Yes, Mayor. I move the ordinance be approved on first reading, advertised according to law, and a public hearing be held on December 18th.
Second.
Roll call?
Thank you.
Councilperson Lembo?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Is there supposed to be a public hearing?
No,
No, it's just first reading.
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, we're not there yet, Steve. At this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions on consent agenda items only. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Mike?
No.
No, just on the consent.
No,
Just on the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move the public portion be closed and the consent agenda resolutions approved on roll call vote.
Second.
I have a question, Mayor. Can I address to Mr. Dupont?
Yes.
2017-347. It's the execution of a settlement between the Borough of Sayreville and the Sayreville Police, PBA.
Yes.
Maybe I'm just missing the point here, but this relates to their vacation time. Sayreville, the borough won our initial case in Superior Court, is that correct?
Correct.
And then the PBA elected to appeal,
Correct.
And then we, as a council, met in late summer, early fall. We made a decision unanimously and I think cooperatively that we were not going to take any action on this case until the appeal was completed. It is my understanding that appeal has not been completed, correct?
It's my understanding, based from Labor Council, that it was withdrawn pending the settlement agreement.
So I'm a bit confused as to why we all agreed to not take any action under advice of counsel, and then we have now decided to offer a settlement. We already
Danny,
won
you
the
got it.
case, and now we're in the appeal process. We agreed all to
They
stay
did.
the course, and now we've decided not to.
We had,
Unless I'm missing something here, but it,
yeah, what had happened, Steve, is that they appealed, and they put a stay on the appeal pending any kind of settlement agreement. So instead of going forward with their appeal, they've chose to drop the appeal in lieu of the settlement. So neither one of us have to go back to court, pay attorney fees, and so forth.
understood. Misunderstanding on my part. Thank you.
Okay, there's an error on 2017-338. While I was
338.
at the League of Municipality, I was talking with someone from the local finance board who told me you can only go out 2 years on a contract unless the local finance board gives you an exemption. So can we change this to a 2-year term, and then we can have Mr. Dupont apply for an exemption
Well, you know,
for the additional year?
if I may, I had the opportunity to speak with the borough administrator and Mr. Kelso. Then I also had the opportunity to speak to the attorney I think it was Attorney Nikki, right? Drafted it at the county level. My reading and interpretation of the act that deals with this is that the most that it can be is it's 5 years, but it can only be either a 3-year initial agreement or one option one or two one-year options or one two-year option. So in my discussion with Mr. Kelso and Nikki, who's an attorney, right, we're 5 years, who's an attorney with the county, they had no objection with that interpretation. And therein lies the changes that were made by the county councils.
Okay, is there a motion? Motion made and seconded, I'm sorry, roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes, but I'm going to abstain from 217-347. Yes to everything else.
Kilpatrick?
Yes, with the exception of 2017-331, I'll be voting no on that.
What number was that?
331.
331. Lembo?
Yes, with an abstention on 2017-347.
347?
Yes, 347.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Okay, anything for executive?
Mayor, we do have a couple things. One is litigation and one is personnel. And if the mayor and council will so oblige, I would read the motion to go into exec. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be resolved by the mayor and borough council, Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, the public portion of this meeting is hereby adjourned in order that the governing body may meet in closed private session for approximately 10 minutes to discuss personnel and litigation. Following the conclusion of said closed session, the governing body shall reconvene the open portion of this public meeting to consider any other matters which may be properly brought before it at this time. The nature and content of the discussion which occurred in closed session shall be made public at such time as the need for non-disclosure no longer exists. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Move the resolution be approved?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Take a motion to go back into open.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Counselor?
Yes, Mayor, there have discussions from the executive session. It's my understanding, based on those discussions, that the council wishes to hire Mr. Surian, S-U-R-E-N-I-A-N, for the purpose of reviewing and/or representing the borough with respect to its Mount Laurel and COA obligations and/or litigations. The executive summary of qualifications of Jeffrey Surian was presented. It's my understanding, based on those review of qualifications, that the mayor and council wished to retain Mr. Surian and his firm, which is Jeffrey Surian and Associates, located at 707 Union Avenue, Brielle, New Jersey, for an hourly rate as outlined in the executive summary and the email, for a sum not to exceed $15,000.
And the purpose is?
The purpose is to review not only the COA litigation and/or assist in the representation of ongoing appeals for the COA litigation that the Borough of Sayreville finds itself in.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Buchanan,
Yes.
Grillo,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments on any and all issues. Steve?
Steve Malineski, 28 Scarlet Drive, Parlin. In the last few meetings, I've asked for two things, and I know at the last meeting, one was the loss of revenue on the development fees, and I think Councilman Melendez also asked for a 10-year performer on what that loss might have been. And also, I was looking for a performer on the cost that COA would bring for compliance to the town. And I know, Mr. Mayo, last meeting, one of those issues you told me was going to be on 1218. I can't remember which one that was for.
Go ahead, Dan.
I believe the mayor told you that both of them would be, according to our professionals, would be ready by December 18th, the last
Okay.
meeting.
That's what I wanted to know.
Unless it was done, able to be completed early. Jay, John,
Do we have a status?
for the 18th? Okay,
Okay.
all right,
Thank you. I just wanted clarity on that point.
okay.
The other thing is, Mr. Mayor, can I find out what's the basis for our appeal on Judge Natale's ruling? Do we have a platform of what we're appealing
It
for?
was an appeal filed by Sachs, right?
There was an appeal that was filed. By-
Let me wait for the attorney to come
Okay.
back. Mike
Okay.
would have the,
I just want to know what the grounds were, because having read the judge's order, I couldn't find out what the appeal would be based on. Okay.
wait a minute, hold on, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
Mike, if you would, the basis for the appeal that Sachs filed against Judge Natale's ruling?
Well, it was a twofold. It was a notice of appeal to say that the decision was arbitrary and capricious. We've ordered the transcript, and so now we have to file a brief, and then also there's a hearing on December 15th, at which time that may be included in the appeal or not. Also, Mr. Sachs, at the last meeting in October, I believe, was authorized to file a notice of motion to vacate the settlement and/or amend the settlement, so that should be heard on December 15th also.
So we should know more about that on the 18th?
Yeah, presuming the judge hears it on December 15th. And that, I don't know that. The judge may want, we may need it to get some more time if, with Mr. Surian being retained. It only gives him 2 weeks to review. I mean, I've got 3 or 4 big reds of materials. So don't hold the court to hold that specific date, because I do want Mr. Surian to have ample enough opportunity to give us a good opinion.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Mike?
Mike Diadio, 13 Zaleski Drive, and I'm also the chairman of SERA. In regards to Ordinance 386-17, I want to thank you for taking the redevelopment zone out of this ordinance. But there's a couple of other issues with this ordinance that when I read it, just kind of jumped out on me. On page 6, paragraph 7, it says exempted from these provisions shall be approvals for the following classes of development. And a bunch of these classes, like utility facilities, for example, if we were to build a progen or a cogen plant or an electric plant or a natural gas plant somewhere that was not in the redevelopment zone, you don't want the fee? Educational. I spoke to Mr. Baker about this. The Amboy Cinema plot, for example, if Drake Business School came in and wanted to build a $20 million school, you don't want the $500,000? Quasi-public uses, including clubs, lodges, and similar uses. Country club, miniature golf course, batting cages, basketball courts. Businesses that have outdoor recreational facilities would be exempt. Public uses, I can't be any more vague. Like, what the heck does that mean? Is it free to the public? Anyone that uses something that lives in the public domain? What does that mean? Hospital uses. Suppose a walk-in medical clinic opened up and they had 6 beds and they call themselves a hospital. That's a big money development that you wouldn't be collecting fees on. Others as required. What the heck does that mean? Others as required. Do you know how many loopholes that would open up? Let me tell you something. I've been doing land use for 18 years. These land use developers, Kaplan, PRC, have some of the sharpest lawyers in the state. They're going to go through this like a piece of Swiss cheese. This paragraph needs to be taken out of this ordinance, unless you don't want the money.
We want the money. Can we do that? Can we take that? Can we strike that?
I mean, it's up to you. But I'm telling you, from a land use perspective, this is full of holes.
Well,
this paragraph.
Mr. Leon Cavello had prepared this ordinance. What I would suggest, we have the ordinance in and of itself that's been passed. We can't just simply amend it because that's a substantial change. My suggestion is to let me sit down with Mr. Leon Cavello, understand the reasons for paragraph.
It was only introduced for first
I'm sorry, strike that.
You could probably remove that paragraph if it's legal to do so.
But anything other than F was already approved, because
Right.
we approved this ordinance. This is just the changes we're doing tonight.
Well, Mr. Leon Cavello,
These
unless...
other things are already in the
Right, this is the
original
introduction. I'm sorry, we got confused here. Mr. Leon Cavello, do you have any comments regarding Mr. Diadio's thoughts about paragraph 7?
Yes, I had a conversation.
Now's the time to take it out.
Now's the time to
Yeah.
take it out.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Mr. Sachs. He said he had a conversation with you and Mr. Baker, and Mr. Baker's response to Mr. Daddio was paragraph 5 on page 3, I believe. We came to this, and there were some comments, I guess, from Mr. Daddio on something that was given to one of the clerks here.
Yeah,
we
just
decided.
just for the edification of the public, what was revised or amended in this, the language contains, nothing contained herein to the contrary withstanding, the fees set forth in this ordinance shall not apply to property located within areas which the borough has designated as area in need of redevelopment. Development fees, if any, for property located in areas designated as in need of redevelopment shall be determined by the Sayreville Economic and Redevelopment Agency and shall be made part of the redevelopment agency for any such property. So based on the discussions, I think, with Mr. Sachs and Mr. Baker, I believe, thought that some of the concerns that you're raising in paragraph 7 were addressed in paragraph 5.
No.
So,
No,
Redevelopment part I have no issue with.
Okay.
That's fine. It's just this page 6, paragraph 7 that has these exemptions.
and this deals with exempted from these provisions, and just for the record, exempted from these provisions shall be approvals for the following classes of development, meaning that they don't have any fees to pay. And those include utility facilities, educational, cultural, outdoor, recreation facilities, quasi-public uses, including lodges, clubs, and similar uses, public uses, hospital uses, others as required. If in fact that the mayor and council wishes to strike that, then now's the time to do this, since this is on for introduction versus adoption.
Your decision, I'm just bringing it to your attention.
Makes sense.
It makes sense.
Up to
It's
you.
basically saying
So
anything
what-
that isn't
so what we
residential
need-
is going to be exempt.
What we need to do, though, is we just need another motion to amend the ordinance 38617 to remove, that was previously adopted, right? Or not adopted, introduced, right?
The other ordinance was adopted, but inasmuch as this ordinance is being read in its entirety and presented in its entirety once again, and it's in black and white in front of us, I think that we can go ahead and remove that paragraph.
Okay, so then this is a motion, someone needs to move a motion to remove from the introduced ordinance of 38617, paragraph 7, on page 6, A through F.
So moved.
Just one moment before we do that. I think Mr. Daddio is exactly right, but I'm not sure if you or Mr. Leon Cavello need to look into tax-exempt developments, so 501c3s, 4s, 5s, 7s, 10s. I don't know if we need to specifically delineate that they would be exempt,
Well-
or maybe we don't want them to be exempt, but they're exempt from property tax.
Well, I agree, but what you have in this paragraph on page 7, you have the appeal of development fees. So the appeal of development fees, if I'm a 501c and I'm saying, hey, listen, I shouldn't have to pay taxes, then I have this right of appeal.
Right.
Okay.
So I wouldn't specifically delineate that. So with the motion made and seconded, we are. Right.
Pat seconded.
Oh, we got a second? Okay. Then we are amending the introduced ordinance of 386-17 to remove paragraph 7 on page 6, subparagraphs A through F.
Okay, motion made and seconded, roll call.
Councilpersons Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Buchanan,
Yes.
Grillo,
Yes.
Lembo,
Yes.
Melendez,
Yes.
Novak.
Yes.
Thanks,
Anything
Mr.
else,
Gaddar.
Mike?
Thank you, I think did the right thing, thanks.
Jim, you had your hand up?
Pencil, actually. Never mind.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Gruel Square in Parlin. I see that it was on the agenda, on the consent agenda, to forward with the appraisal for the property in Melrose. What about the property on North Ernston Road? What's the status of that?
Dan?
It's already been to the appraisers to go do their work. It's been approved,
When was that approved?
the meeting before last.
The meeting before the last meeting. I know that you appropriated the money. You authorized them to do it?
There was a motion made and seconded and approved, or a resolution, not a motion, a resolution to approve. I know that there has been a correspondence sent to both appraisals to proceed with work.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks, Mr.
that.
Robbins.
A few meetings back in October, I asked the question whether or not Gillette Manor was included in the count, in the affordable housing count, in our response in the lawsuits. Mr. Leon Cavella didn't know then and didn't know at the next meeting, and I wasn't at the next meeting. Mr. Frankel, I sent you a couple emails that I did not get any responses to. Do we know the answer to that question?
John?
Fine. Go ahead, John.
Okay.
I'll say this. From information that I believe Mr. Lembo and I received, it was not included
It
in
was
the
not.
original.
It was not in there.
Numbers are integral to this case. the number of units, the number of market rate units that we have to build depend on the number of affordable units that we already have. And Mr. Leon Cavella, since October, you didn't have the time to check to see if they were included? I'm going to suggest that maybe in 2018, we need a planner who has the time to devote to one of the most important issues facing this town. I mean, there are upwards a number of different people have different numbers, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 market rate apartments that will be built. And that is a function of the number of affordable housing units that we have right now. And if some of our affordable units or senior units weren't included in there, well, from a falsehood follows a falsehood. Everything else is wrong. What we argued, the numbers that we settled on with the judge, they're wrong. They're meaningless. And they could mean, based on what was counted, what wasn't counted, we could be building maybe 200, 300, 400, 500 more market rate units. And I don't have to tell you, I went through this before. We know how many kids that's going to be. We know how many cars that's going to be. We know how many more thousands of dollars in taxes that's going to be. Because we didn't have the time to count. I mean, Gillette Manor isn't, you know, the other day I drove down Kearney Road off Route 35 in the Melrose section. Not a lot of people have ever been on Kearney Road. Not a lot of people know where it is. They're hidden away there. This is Gillette Manor. This is 4 stories high. You can't miss it.
Anything else, Jim?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the attorney that you retained this evening, who is that gentleman? Where did he come from?
Mr. Surian. Mr. Surian has over 3 decades of experience working with the Mount Laurel Doctrine. He was also a clerk to Judge Serpentelli, the assignment judge for...
I know Gene.
Yeah.
Okay. And is he going to pursue a reconsideration in addition to or instead of or, well, in addition to an appeal?
He's going to provide us a game plan and
Okay.
give us an opinion as to the game plan and what the merits, if any, what we should be doing.
Okay. Mayor, I just want to make one more comment. This is probably the 4th or 5th meeting where a resident has raised something like Mr. Daddio raised today, and the council scrambled, or the governing body scrambled to do some things. This happened when we were discussing the affordable housing ordinances, and a lot of people who watched it on television referred to it as a cluster something or other. And it was. And I'm going to suggest to you that that happens because of the way you have the meetings now. You have the public meeting, and after this you have the agenda session. You sit down there, you raise something, Mayor said, anything else? And you move out of here as quickly as you can. Years ago, the meetings used to be on different nights. They used to be in 310. You used to sit across from one another at a table where you could discuss things. Those kinds of things didn't happen back then. Now it's like you're going through the motions. And we saw some problems with the affordable housing ordinances. We saw some problems that could have resulted if a citizen, albeit a wise one, like Mr. Daddio, didn't come up and say something, because you don't, under this format, where you have the meetings like this, you don't have the opportunity to discuss these things. And I would very strongly suggest you consider going back to the way it used to be done, where you have the opportunity to sit down and discuss these things, where you sit around a table, where you look at one another, not at this table where you're looking at an audience, where you can really delve into things and get into the weeds, so that this kind of cluster, whatever, doesn't continue to happen. Because when it does happen, we all pay for it. We pay for it in taxes, we pay for it in more apartments and houses and more cars and more kids in schools. That's just not a good way to run a business. So I would very strongly suggest maybe in 2018 you take that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Ken?
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Olszewski, 108 North Edward Street. At the last meeting, you authorized Larry Sachs to file the appeal of Judge Natale's decision on COA. Do we know, in fact, was that appeal filed?
Yes, sir.
It was filed.
Yes.
What will Mr. Sachs' role be going forward?
Well, it's at this point in time, I think Mr. Surian is going to apprise the mayor and council of strategy, and then Mr. Sachs is still the attorney of record until Mr. Surian apprises us of the strategy and the merits of the appeal and also the review of the file. Mr. Sachs is still the attorney of record.
So Mr. Surian has not actually been engaged to handle the appeal yet?
Well, at this point in time, it's solely for the basis for giving his opinion as to the merits of the appeal, a strategy. Once that opinion is provided, that's why it's been given a not to exceed $15,000. Then once he provides that opinion as to litigation efforts, I'm sure that this mayor and council will then engage him for pursuit of those litigation plans and goals.
Yeah, I'm sure all of us are a little concerned about how many meters are going to be running on this thing, and that you know, there's not an unlimited number of meters because there's not an unlimited amount of money in the borough treasury. I want to go back to the question was brought up a little bit here tonight, but I asked it at the last meeting, and maybe I didn't understand it well or I didn't express it well, but I asked Mr. DuPont, and he replied, but some of the people that I've talked to in the meantime had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I'm not so sure if they knew what Mr. DuPont was talking about. I'm not so sure I knew what the hell I was talking about. So let's get back to this question about the allocation of fees. And by fees, I'm talking about the legal fees in this COA case. Can you brief us a little more on that, Councilor?
There's been an application filed by the Fair Share Housing and as well as Kaplan for fees. Those have not been heard. As I was just speaking to the other gentleman just talked about this. This hearing is scheduled for December 15th.
Okay, the hearing is scheduled for December 15th, so
correct.
Somebody will, on our behalf, presumably argue this case that we're not stuck with everybody's fees.
And Mr. Sachs has already filed opposition to those fees.
So Mr. Sachs will be arguing that case on December 15th?
Correct, unless Mr. Surian believes that the motion should be adjourned for filing of additional pleadings, or Mr. Surian believes that he would be better suited for that argument.
Okay, let's move on beyond fees, because that was my real question last time. What is this judicial reconsideration? Can you explain that to us, Councilor?
Yes, I think that I explained it the last time, and that is Mr. Sachs was authorized not only to file a notice of appeal, but also to file a notice of motion to either vacate or amend the settlement. That was scheduled to be heard on or before or with the fee motion that's scheduled for December 15th. I know Mr. Sachs is in the process of filing that application. I have not seen it yet.
So does this judicial reconsideration mean that this will go back before Judge Natale? Can new evidence be presented at that time, or what does that entail?
That basically allows us to file a motion to vacate the settlement and or amend the settlement for a variety of reasons. Whatever reason that Mr. Sachs or Mr. Leon Cavello have a reason to present, that is the time to present it.
Well, time out here, if I may. We're talking about, yes, you may be able to present something else. Now, Mr. Robinson had asked if Gillette Manor was added into those numbers, original numbers. I sent an email to Mr. Leon Cavello asking if those numbers, and he hasn't had the time to get back to us with that number. That would be part of that argument, wouldn't it?
Yeah, all of those issues will be part.
He has no time.
Part and parcel of this motion to amend or vacate.
And that's within the jurisdiction of Judge Natale.
Correct.
So, and hypothetically, if something favorable came out of that hearing or any subsequent hearing before the fees are settled, we could cancel the appeal. That would go before a three-judge appeals court?
Correct. So hypothetically, if the judge says, okay, hey, listen, you know what, Saraville, you're correct. You know, I'm going to throw out the whole settlement. Well, then the notice of appeal that's filed would be withdrawn, and we'd go back to square one. And but also in the alternative, though, if the judge says, no, I'm going to award whatever fees, and I disagree with the motion to vacate or amend, we also have the right to file an appeal to with those respective decisions.
So is it true that once the fees are settled,
Not settled, decided.
Are decided, right, then our recourse is an appeal, and that would be heard by a three-judge panel? Is that how that works?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the final thing that Judge Natale can do.
Right. And the final thing that Judge Natale can hear is not only the fees, but also the motion to amend and or vacate.
And the time frame for that is the time that he settles the fees.
The time for those motions to be heard is presently scheduled for December 15th.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Oh, young lady, yes, please come.
Janice Benedetto, 1 Thomas Avenue in the Melrose section. I wanted to thank Mr. Frankel for getting back to me with the information that the appraisal firms for the Cross Avenue National Lead site were engaged on November 15th, and we have a 4 to 6 week wait for the actual appraisals to take place. And I assume then we'll be notified that you get the reports. One thing I wanted to mention is that these sessions and are being watched on the television and on YouTube by residents of the Melrose section, but also other residents of the town. As I've been approached now more than once outside of Melrose, at my gym, for instance, where a woman I've known since 2004 came up to me that I've only known her to say good morning to, and started talking to me about all of this and her concerns. So I wanted to, for everyone's education who is watching this and can't be here tonight, ask about the, in light of all of the appeal status and the review by the new attorney, where we stand with the intervener status with National Lead, because I understand you got some information today, and now in light of all of this, I want it to be known how it all plays in, so that people who also are not here will know how it all plays into the appeal process, because I was under the impression that if National Lead actually got appointed as an intervener, we had 45 days to appeal. Now, in light of all of this new circumstance, I don't know what's getting appealed, what's just assumed to be getting appealed, or if we have to do something particular specific on each individual court decision, court order, court paperwork of whatever you call it, because I'm not a lawyer, so I might not use the correct terminology.
Yeah, I think that you and I spoke prior to the meeting, and I explained to you
Yes.
that National Lead has filed an answer. There's been no appeal as to the National Lead intervener decision. That was at the discretion of the judge. The National Lead has filed an answer that was just received in today's, matter of fact, I think I got an email today about it. So as I explained to Mr. Olszewski, that the appeal has been filed. The motion to have the fees heard are going to be heard for December 15th, 2017, before Judge Natale. Larry Sachs has, again, as I said, filed a notice of appeal as to the initial decision that Judge Natale entered in, I believe, in October. There is, Mr. Sachs was also authorized to file a notice of motion to amend and/or vacate the settlement that I believe Mr. Sachs is aiming to be heard on December 15th, 2017, before Judge Natale. And today, Mayor and Council have approved the hiring of Mr. Surian to oversee, to review, and to give an opinion as to the merits of the appeal, as well as strategy as to what motion should be filed. So that means that the motion for fees may or may not be heard on December 15th, depending on the opinion and review of Mr. Surian.
All right, and when you said that National Lead filed a paper, what exactly did that entail?
It was just an answer to the complaint filed in this matter.
To a complaint covering what exactly?
It was just to participate in the review of the COA litigation.
Just to participate in the generalized...
Correct, and to be included in it, correct.
And right now in the COA litigation, just so the general public understands, who are the interveners and who were denied intervener status? And who was pending intervener status?
The only one that I know that the Mako property was denied intervener. I know that the only other intervener was Kaplan and National Lead. Oh, and Sarah also.
And Sarah...
There's three, that's right.
So Sarah's been granted it, Kaplan's been granted it, and National Lead is still in question.
No, it's been granted.
It's been granted.
Right.
So then...
And I think I explained that to you earlier on
right,
this evening.
But number one, I want to clarify my understanding. And so if they've been granted it, then technically, if we didn't have all of this other appeal process going on, we would have to appeal it within 45 days?
There is an appeal of that intervener order if, in fact, if there was an appealable issue.
It's already part of all of this appeal process.
No,
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
National Lead has not filed. National Lead's intervener order has not appealed.
We have not appealed National Lead's order. Okay, that's
right.
what
You authorized an overall appeal of the whole decision of October of 2017.
All right, so should we be authorizing an appeal for the National Lead intervener status that is now official?
Well, I'm not quite
just to cover our bases and to have an insurance policy, so there's no issue falling through the cracks.
I don't believe that Mr. Sachs or Mr. Leon Cavello has indicated that there is a basis for the appeal. You can authorize that this mayor and council believes that the opinion of Mr. Surian that there is a appeal issue. There certainly can be an appeal filed of that intervener order.
Will we be within the 45 days?
Right.
The order, I'm not quite sure. Mr. Leon Cavello, do you remember when the order of National Lead was entered? I think it was entered in November, if I recall correctly. Was it entered in October?
I think it was in early November.
Right. So if the mayor and council wish, they can make a motion this evening to authorize Mr. Sachs to file an appeal of the National Lead intervener order. So if someone wants to make that motion, I will include that in the email that I'm, as we said,
I'll
drafting.
make that motion.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes. Now, I have one question, if you don't mind, Mike. Mayor, is it all right?
Go right ahead.
I just have a question in that we're filing this appeal. Are we, in this appeal, are we going with the new numbers that Susan Gruel had come up with? She said we had missed certain credits that we should have
Some of those arguments will be presented in the motion to vacate and/or amend the settlement. Those certainly will, such as the Gillette Manor. Mrs. Gruel has, that's part and parcel of the meeting of December 4th to review the arguments. Some of the arguments that...
There were other ones that were found.
Right.
Yeah, there were quite a
And
few.
so there's a list or litany of arguments that will be presented by Mr. Sachs.
Mayor, follow up to that question? We brought to the planning board in late September the request to look at potential adaptive reuse properties as well as rezoning of Route 35, which both were under the recommendation of the special master. Council approved it, planning board approved it. Mr. Leon Cavella, do you have any status on those two reports? Because they should be included as well, because they could further reduce the number.
John, you need to.
We were going to have a discussion with the, what the kickoff was with this Rutgers Studio project.
Well, the adaptive reuse is its own entity. I mean, that has nothing to do with Rutgers. Have you had a chance to inventory older unused buildings yet?
No, I have not had a chance to do that.
So I think we're going to have to, obviously we don't have the data, but I suppose, Mr. DuPont, there'll have to be some discussion in whatever correspondence you have about those two additional items, because they'll work in our favor even if we find one unit. So,
And again, just for everyone's edification, we have a meeting with COA, all the interested parties on the borough side on December 4th at, I believe, Jay's office.
One other thing that was in the Susan Gruel report, if I might add, I don't know if you called it something else, and I don't know that it comes under a different name, but I believe there are rooms rented at Parlin House that were never counted in the master plan, but Susan Gruel found credits for and what have you. Is that all being considered too? Because there were quite a number there.
Well, I think one of the reasons why we, as some members of this council, voted to bring on Susan Gruel was to look at all of those numbers. Since that time, with what she's been able to review, we all are aware of the fact that she did find additional credits that had not been utilized within that plan when it was devised. I think that all of these things, and I would expect, and I'm hopeful that when we have the review by Mr. Surian, that he's going to use all of those things as part of our grounds for filing an appeal and hopefully righting this disastrous ship right now. I mean, it would be ridiculous to turn around and say, oh, well, we found all of these afterwards using another planner, and yet we can't use that as part of our appeal to bring to a judge and say, look at what wasn't counted.
And I would think maybe her report could be used as an appeal against National Lead with the intervener status if she's making the recommendation that the Cross Avenue National Lead site is not necessary to be included anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I thank you for answering my questions and also clarifying things so people watching on YouTube and on Channel 15 and talking to me at the gym and ShopRite and places like that understand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, have we answered all your questions? I know that sometimes we can get legal leads here, so I just want to make sure that before you walk away and you get bombarded at the local food store that you feel equipped.
For the time being, otherwise I'll come back and ask more questions, and I'm happy that the council. I'm happy that the council made the resolution to include in the appeal process the review of the National Lead Intervenor status. I appreciate that a great deal, as the appraisals being carried out, and thank you for your time in answering the questions and educating me as I go, and the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. I assume you knew I wouldn't be happy with the response that Mr. Leon Cavella didn't have time to find those. I think that since you have retained special counsel for this, I think that you also ought to authorize Susan Gruel to work with that special counsel to relook at these numbers. I do recall that she found, I think it was either 100 and maybe 166. John, do you know the number? The additional credits that Susan found? Over 200. Okay. Susan found over, thank you. Susan found over 200 credits. I think she did that in a matter of a week or so. And then there were some questions about her continuing to work. I would very strongly suggest that you ask her to continue that. I mean, finding 200 credits, that's an awful lot of units that will not have to be built. That ought to be incorporated into this to get that number down that Mr. Sachs said he negotiated, so that the end product is less than the numbers that have been bandied about, which will be devastating to the town. Now, Mr. DuPont, I have a question I'm not familiar with. When the appeal is filed, as it was filed by Mr. Sachs, can that be augmented when an attorney with special expertise in this area comes in and finds some things?
Yes, you got to remember that all that Mr. Sachs has done thus far, he's filed no pleadings other than a notice of appeal, right? So I ordered the transcript for Mr. Sachs.
Okay.
Mr. Surian then can file whatever pleadings that he deems appropriate and provide any strategy or technical skills that his office might
So
offset.
whatever foundation may have been laid down can be added to?
Yes, and you got to remember that on the December 15th hearing date, presuming that all the motions are heard, right, it will be another basis for an appeal if the judge does not rule in our favor.
Okay. Was Mr. Sachs the attorney for the planning board when the planning board came up with the inclusionary zoning plan?
Yes.
Does anybody know?
Yes.
He was the
Yes.
planning board attorney in 16, correct?
He was?
Mhm.
Okay, so then it would be very difficult for him to argue that perhaps somehow Kaplan's 39 units at Heritage ought to be incorporated into this somehow, and he ought to be made to build or allowed to build them so that we could do away with 200 and some. If he allowed that to happen, it would be very hard for him to then argue on appeal that we did something that we shouldn't have done. And the same thing with the numbers. I mean, if the planning board took those numbers that Mr. Leon Cavella came up with and looked at it and in their wisdom said, yeah, those are all the numbers, it'd be a little bit difficult for him to argue that those numbers aren't right. So that's a concern of mine, because the fact that those numbers, those 200 numbers were found in a week or two, I think really calls everything into question.
And I don't even think that included Gillette.
I don't know. I don't remember. I heard something about it a while ago. I do know the Parlin New Club homes were in there, maybe the St. Stan's homes. There were some single-family homes and maybe nurses, something like that. Every single one counts because we know they're multiplied.
Yep.
Okay, so I would ask you to please consider authorizing Susan Gruel, who has done a pretty good job on this so far in the short amount of time that she's had, to work with special counsel. So that when he goes in, he can go in prepared and well-armed with all the expertise that we can muster.
Do we need to authorize her to meet with, or I'm sorry, the
Yeah, I
attorney?
just was asking Wayne if we were out of money and did we need to reauthorize, you know?
Yeah, the original authorization for Susan Gruel is used up, is done.
I thought there was an amendment.
I thought we amended that. Didn't we amend that? We did amend that.
I thought there was an amendment. I don't.
Yeah,
bel-
but
I don't.
have
I
we
don't.
used that up?
I don't.
And that was used up.
Now, that wasn't specifically, that had nothing to do with the reconsideration or appeal. I don't know if that matters.
was just,
At this point, I want to piggyback off of what Mr. Robinson is saying. I want to make sure that this attorney coming in is going to be able to review all of the information that's been laid out, not just by Leon Cavello, not just by Larry Sachs, but also by Susan Gruel and the other parties that have been involved in trying to fix or find out information that wasn't necessarily apparent to us before. That included individuals that were present with our SARA meetings now, like the attorney, Mr. Baker, who's also working on negotiations with River Road and what we can do forward with that. If we have to formally do that here, I think we need to do that here so that there's no feeling of impropriety or somebody saying, oh, well, that person shouldn't have been allowed in that room.
And Judge Hurley's decision as well. You know, I sent that to Judge Natali. Unfortunately, I didn't know he had issued his order already. I am allowed to communicate with Judge Mayor. I didn't know he had issued his order already and didn't take that into account. But I think that ought to be included because I think some very valid arguments were made, that especially since Kaplan, the same party, is an intervener who is requesting to build all these units. Well,
and he violated a court order.
well, he was allowed to violate a court order by the planning board. He agreed to do what the law required him to do. It was the planning board, actually, that violated the court order and said he didn't have to do that, which is what got us into this mess. And we know that those 39 units, when we have to account for the market rate, are not 39 units, they're close to 240 units,
If I might interrupt,
certainly.
Mr. Robinson, so one of the things that I'm writing just is to call Mr. Surian, but also to provide him with a copy of my file that includes all the correspondence from Mr. Gruel or Mrs. Gruel, all the correspondence that I've received and emails, and also includes any and all reports Mr. Leon Cavello. I'm also going to ask Mr. Leon Cavello if you could photocopy your file, because you have a lot of materials that I don't necessarily have. So the sooner that we give Mr. Surian this information, and I'll also reach out to Mr. Surian and advise him of our,
December 4th meeting?
yeah, December 4th meeting.
Mhm. Because all those parties, I mean, I understand the passing of paperwork is important so that he can review the documents, but one of the things that I've found in this situation is that one of the best way to get information is to be face-to-face with people, to have open and clear dialogue. So, you know, is that going to be something that's afforded also to Mr. Surian, is having the ability to communicate and have discussions with a Ms. Gruel, I mean, he's going to need to speak to Larry Sachs. He's going to need to speak to Leon Cavello to some degree in order to take a look at really what we've been faced with and how this process has gone on for the past 2 years. In order for him to really sit there and give us an honest opinion about whether or not he thinks we have a leg to stand on, quite frankly, when it comes to any type of appeal, whether it be for the attorney's fees that Kaplan is looking for, the intervener, or the overall plan that we're all dealing with.
I'll make sure that I get on, have spoken to Mr. Surian and Mr. Sachs tomorrow, so.
Can you also make sure that he gets a copy of the original order from the judge for the Kaplan property that
Yep.
was
Yep,
ordered was
that'll
ignored?
be included in
Judge
my
Hurley's
file.
decision you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm hoping that on appeal or on reconsideration, the judge would see that we are very sincere in trying to fulfill our obligation, but mistakes were made in what was submitted, numbers were left out, numbers were erroneous, and that we're going to try and get it right this time. And I hope we're successful. Thank you.
Should Susan Gruel be authorized for a not-to-exceed figure to,
Yeah.
to be able to consult with?
What was the number last time?
If we're out of money, yeah.
I think it was 10. Yeah. Was it 10?
I would authorize it, probably another 15 grand.
It's a little premature
Second.
to go with a contract for $15,000 when the new attorney that we appointed tonight hasn't even looked at a piece of paper yet. I mean,
I was thinking in terms of maybe.
We're throwing a lot of money around. I know we've been bankrolling higher Gruel this year, but to me, it just seems a bit premature.
I think
It may be premature in your eyes, however, obviously, Ms. Gruel has had the time to find these other numbers for us. So I don't mind spending the money if we have somebody who's going to spend the time to do the work.
I think I just would like Mrs. Gruel. I know Mrs. Gruel is supposed to be there on our December 4th meeting.
And if we're out of money already.
So it's important that she also has the ability to participate or contact this Mr. Surian.
So if we're out of money, we're gonna have to designate something.
If we're out of money.
I don't know that we have to go to 15 just yet, until we get the attorney's decision as to whether we have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, you can do
This
not.
is what I don't want to see happen, is we just authorized this gentleman to come in and actually review everything so that we can be prepared for a December 15th court date. In the event that Susan Gruel turns around and says, listen,
Nobody's paying
I
me
have, no
anymore."
one's paying me.
No, we have
What are we
to-
going to wait until December 18th after, say, oh, we didn't pay her? Or turn around, and now she
Yeah.
can't work with
We
this
gotta do
individual.
something at
Right,
this
so-
week.
But it's a not to exceed, right?
She
So
has
it's
to
billable.
It's a not to
participate in
exceed,
it, sure.
it's billable. I mean, quite honestly, the woman's been worth every red cent we've given her so far, in my personal opinion.
See, someone just needs to make a
All
motion.
right, I'll make the motion.
I thought we did.
Authorize Susan Gruel not to
Second.
exceed $15,000.
Is there a second?
I think Vicky seconded.
I thought we did
Roll
that.
call?
Yeah, we did that already, but.
Councilperson Melendez?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
No.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Is that 15,000? Okay, Ken, you had your hand up?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank God for Susan Gruel. Without her, as the councilwoman said, we would be in a lot worse shape than we are when this guy we've hired tonight reviews the process and we go forward for an appeal. But that's not the real reason I came here. A prior speaker talked about people watching this on YouTube and Channel 15, which reminded me, at our last council meeting, a resident came up to me and said, "Oh, I watch these meetings on TV, but you can't hear the sound." Now, we talked about that here months ago. I can't confirm that. I usually, if I want to watch something, I do it on YouTube. But do we know
Actually, that was
the sound is still a problem?
It was an issue about 2 months ago, and it's been rectified. So I don't know if you saw her at the gym or whoever, but last I checked, sound was good. So
Our IT director has rectified the problem. I think you heard that, as
was a couple
Councilman
months
Lennis
ago.
says, 2 months ago.
We had a problem
We
with
had a
the-
problem. They came in, they fixed it, they amplified it. We need to upgrade our system. We know that. It's going to be part of our capital for next year to do it. But for right now, it's working.
it's working as it was. It's not the best it could be, but that's a long-term plan.
So we've talked about it a few months ago, and how long did it take that to get rectified? I mean, approximately.
I believe it was 2 meetings.
No, it was
Okay.
less than that. It was less than that. It was probably around 2 weeks it took to rectify.
So it is working now. If I go to watch Channel 15, I'm concerned, not about me, because I come to these meetings.
I have not heard a complaint from 2 months ago till now, so I'm assuming it's working. Usually we know it's not working because we get complaints.
We identified the problem.
So
knew exactly
we
what it was.
fixed what we thought is the problem. We haven't had a complaint since, but I haven't listened to the meeting like tomorrow. I'm assuming it's working, because otherwise we would have gotten complaints.
And it actually wasn't a borough problem, it was an optimum problem.
It was
It
an
wasn't our
optimum
But
problem.
we have an IT director.
Well, regardless of whose problem it was, it's up to us to either fix it or get to the people we're
So we have
paying,
the
et
best
cetera,
IT director
to
out
get
of
it
every
fixed.
town
Yeah,
in
a
Middlesex
resident who
County.
was here at the last meeting came up to me and said, "Oh, I watch the meetings on TV, but you can't hear them." I just want to make sure that's been resolved.
It is.
And it wasn't just resolved yesterday, because she said, "I watch all the meetings, but you can't hear them." And she,
You could have her call Dan Frankel if you hear it again.
well, I'm going to go home and make it a point to watch them myself.
Wednesday.
To make sure, because quite frankly, we talked about this months ago, and if the sound is still not going, that's kind of ridiculous. I'll take your word for it. I will go home and confirm that. And if it's not working, I'm
Call
going to
me.
assure you,
You can call me.
I'll be here at the next meeting on December 18th
You can just call me. You don't
to
even have to
talk
wait.
about it. Thank you.
The
Yes,
last
sir.
meeting I watched, I could hear everybody.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Vincent Macula. I live in Perth Amboy. I'm a healthcare worker, as well as I've had experience in traditional housing. I'm just going to try to make it really brief. My reason for coming here is to inform you, as far as I know, that to try to help the restoration of the Salvation Army, which has functioned and helped Cerevel for many years. For actually about 4 decades, I believe it's been open. Due to budgetary difficulties, the shelter care and the care of misfortunate members of our society has stopped operating, as far as I know. I'd like you to kindly acknowledge the underserved, destitute, and their transition from joblessness, homelessness, and interactions with the justice system, and to try to resolve that issue. I have copies of a petition I have to the council. I take it, I've known people from Cerevel presently
Vincent,
that
if
are
you could hold
homeless.
the mic closer.
I know presently people who are from Cerevel who are homeless. I think, according to the county count, the pit count, that was done last year, I think there's approximately 300 people that were in shelters, according to that count. Some of them that went in from Cerevel. The Salvation Army had 30. That's 10% of the shelter population that's been eliminated from having an opportunity to go to a shelter. As a healthcare worker, and this is not a housing issue, it's being housed specifically. As a healthcare worker, people actually could be discharged from a hospital with nowhere to go, with nothing but a street corner, a shed, or some other inappropriate facility. In fact, the Diocese of Metuchen says there's actually 130,000 people in this county who are without proper housing. And if you look at the coming home count, a county and a municipal nonprofit effort, there's 2,000 people that are actually homeless. The reason why I come here is to ask you to at least communicate with the various towns in this area, in Middlesex County, Perth Amboy, South Amboy, Woodbridge, Carteret, whatever. Start to communicate on how this is going to be done. Because if one shelter that's been operating for 4 decades is just eliminated because of budgetary restraints, what is going to happen when more and more people face homelessness? I was under homeless based on Hurricane Sandy, and believe me, trying to find a room, trying to find somewhere to go is difficult. And as a county that's faced with future storms, faced with economic problems, people losing their jobs, you're going to have to find temporary, situational housing for people to go to. So I appreciate Mayor being able to communicate to you. I did communicate with you about a month and a half ago concerning healthcare issues that affect the hospital in this area, and I appreciate being able to distribute this copy and ask you to try to form some kind of communication with the entire governing bodies in Middlesex County.
Mr. Macula, there is a county organization on homelessness.
Yes.
And Captain Fitzgerald,
Fitzsimmons.
Fitz, of the Centerville Police Department, has been our liaison to that organization for several years now. We're pretty active in it. So it's not that it's a problem, A, we don't know about, or B, we turned a blind eye to. When Hurricane Sandy came here, we had hundreds of families that needed temporary shelter, and we basically took care of them. We found them places to live, or their families came forward, or their relatives. But that being said, it's not a rampant problem in Centerville. It will be a problem from time to time, and we address it as it comes up.
Well, you've discussed the issue with, and I appreciate seeing the children here today. I want to talk about spiritually. Outside, and I give them a lot of credit for playing softball out in the field tonight. It takes spirit to get involved in something like that, Mayor. Saturday, because you have a wonderful recreational program at Kennedy Park, I played tennis. A homeless guy came up, right? And he had the spirit. I don't know if I fully accepted the fact he was facing that homelessness. The Salvation Army, as a traditional program for 4 decades, could have provided him some temporary place to house himself. And that's why I'm here tonight, because I've worked with people. It's a hard issue.
I'm not following what you're asking of us.
I'm asking of you to communicate and to help either financially. Please distribute that to the entire council. I have 8 or 9 copies.
Okay.
To help the Salvation Army continue to function, because they provide an intervention into
Why don't you have,
serious.
who's running the Salvation Army now in Perth Amboy?
The Salvation Army can be
No,
communicated. It's on State Street in Perth.
No, I know exactly where it is.
Right.
It's the major?
You should communicate. You can get the address
Okay.
by any telephone book. Allow yourself the opportunity to call them, maybe call Mayor Diaz, call the mayor of South Amboy, and try to to see what you can do as a group to keep that shelter going.
Okay, thank
Because
you.
I've worked for shelters, I know it's needed.
Thank you, Mr. Macula. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Junior. I'm with Food and Water Watch. We're an environmental nonprofit out of New Brunswick.
We don't have your full name, please?
Junior Romero.
Okay.
We're out of New Brunswick. We've been in New Jersey for the past 8 years. I came today to talk about our renewable energy initiative, but after looking at y'all's website, I wanted to ask a few questions about the Northeast Supply Enhancement project being proposed. It's basically a natural gas expansion project. There's going to be a 26-mile pipeline through the Raritan Bay, 3 miles of pipeline through Old Bridge and Sayreville, and it's going to be going through the compressor station 207, which I believe is in Sayreville's jurisdiction in Parlin. I noticed there was nothing on the Sayreville Township website regarding this proposal, even Old Bridge, where most of the proposal goes through. Even they have a blog part of their website that explains this project. You'll find it on the last page of that handout packet. On the other part of this project is a gas compressor station proposed for Somerset, Franklin Township, which we're fighting vigorously. These compressor stations, basically what they are, if you have to compress gas every so many miles so it won't explode. But the problem is that many of these are powered by gas, and they run 24 hours a day, most of them, including the one here in Sayreville and the one proposed for Franklin Township in Somerset County. They spew out benzene and carcinogens into the air that can cause cancer, and methane, and that's what's happening in the one here in Parlin. But I'm just wondering if this matter has been addressed to this governing body before.
Is this the pipeline that goes under the water and comes out in New York or Long Island someplace?
This is going to Rockaway, New York City.
I mean, that's been there for a very long time.
Sure, you're right. So this is going to be basically an expansion of it. So they're going to create another basically mimic project right next to it. So it's going to be 26 more miles, 3 more miles next to the one currently here. The problem is they're leaving the 50-year-old pipelines there, and they're still going to use them, and they're going to be pushing even more gas at an accelerated rate through the compressor station you have here. So they're not doing anything to the old pipes. If anything, they're just putting new ones.
What is it that you're asking for, sir?
So I'm asking the governing body to relay this communication to your residents.
Is your contact information on this material?
It is on the sheet. And
okay, well, I'm going to instruct the clerk to have the chairperson of our environmental group, Terry Yetzko, to contact you. That's the proper channel. I'm not disregarding anything you're saying. I've seen this. It was actually you guys had a booth down at the League of Municipalities a week.
We
or so
did,
ago.
yes.
Yeah.
And at Sayreville Day as well.
Right. So we'll give it to the Environmental Commission. They'll make an assessment and evaluation, and then it will come back up the ladder.
That sounds great. And
But it's Terry Yetzko, and I'll ask her to contact you.
Sounds perfect. This proposal's, the federal government approves these projects. It's all up to them.
Yeah, they approved this a couple of years ago, didn't they?
They did. 2015, they expanded the one in Parlin, the compressor, and the pipeline. They approved that a few years ago. But this project has a approval date of July of next year. So we already have 4 townships already passing resolutions strictly opposing this project. We're trying to get Middlesex County to oppose it. They've intervened, which is anyone can intervene with the federal government's.
Right.
But I'm glad to communicate more with your environmental commission.
Okay. I mean, that's the proper channel to go through, and then their recommendation would come to us. And
sounds great. The other thing, I won't spend too much time on it. It's just
if you would wait a while, or Terry, if you would send the young man Terry's contact information tomorrow.
I'll stay after the meeting.
And then you can be proactive contacting her.
You got it. The other thing is we have an elected official pledge. Basically, do you support renewable energy? Do you support the science behind climate change? Over 60 elected officials have supported it here in New Jersey, including your senator. Senator represents the 19th district, has signed this pledge. I hope you'll consider it. Yeah, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Being no other questions, entertain a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So before we adjourn, we'll take a 10-minute break between the meetings. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're going to take 10 minutes.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you, Mikey. Only the names were changed to protect the innocent. Classic line, remember that? Dragnet.
Mike.
All your grandkids are local, right, man?
Yeah, my kids stay in town, yeah. Yeah, actually, my son lives up the road from me.
Right, yeah, the one.
Right, and, on the other side, what was that, Barker? Is that Barker? What runs through, terminates at Robert Place?
Stevens. What?
The one before that.
Oh, I don't know. I know what street you mean. I know what street you mean. I don't remember.
And my daughter lives on Hudson Court. Bought a house on Hudson Court. Actually, it's next door to, I don't know if you knew where Mickey Sedlak lived. Next door to that house. And the other side of Mickey Sedlak where Jerry Carney. So yeah, so.
Oh, it's nice. Close by.
Yeah, yeah. That helps. Well, my daughter works for Oakridge. That's good.
Okay.
Her husband and son-in-law works for East Brunswick. He's an IT supervisor in East Brunswick. That's relatively close.
Okay.
He grew up in East Brunswick. Parents stayed in East Brunswick. Now my son works for the Institute. So it's close. The only thing my daughter-in-law has to go to Chippewa all day.
No, that's
For
the
her
furthest.
job.
Oh, that's
For her
not
job.
bad, though. It's not bad at all.
She's got a pretty good job.
It's nice that it's nice that everybody stayed close by.
Yeah.
You never know how things. You never know where the kids are going to end up.
Yeah.
When my daughter first started looking for graduate schools, Dad, the couple that I really like are all in Texas. Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. And sure enough, that's where she's in Houston. Met a young man who's engaged now. They're gonna end up in Texas. Makes it difficult on the holidays,
Oh, yeah.
She didn't come up for Thanksgiving, but she's coming for Christmas. Next year they'll reverse it,
That was like my brother. There was only two of us. Yeah, the only sibling I was, But from the time, well, this is, when he was doing his residency, he did his residency, his residency out in Wisconsin, okay, Madison, Wisconsin. So he and his wife went out there in an apartment for a year or whatever he had to. Back then, Catholic, Roman Catholic, okay, went to church every morning. So neither one of them really approved of it. Neither one of them approved of it.
Okay. All right.
So, quite cool, they settled in Georgia. After they settled.
Oh, that's funny.
And they've been there ever since.
Oh, jeez.
Outside of Augusta. First he was in Augusta, and now he's in a suburb of Augusta. Nice house, you know. Yeah. So, yeah. And he comes up for the holidays. He comes up at least once a year. He likes to come for the holiday, Christmas, and he likes to come out for the summer. This year, he didn't come out for the summer. His wife was out sooner than that. His wife's mother was her sister. And help out of something. They're come out earlier than now they have a son now that's out of school, out of college, California, Los Angeles area, trying to make it in music.
Hey, good luck.
And he's got a daughter in college here at Tech, home for civil engineering. And, that's still like 2 hours away from, you know, outside of
Trying to make it in the music industry in LA. My boy. That's a full order.
Yeah, well, he's tried it in Manhattan. He's in college now, about 4 years in Manhattan. And nothing was breaking there. He has hooked up with some people, named people. Actually, he graduated with, he actually won the first year in college. I don't know if you heard of him, Charlie Booth, B-U-T-H. He's a pop singer, pretty popular. He's already moved to his second house in LA. Okay. Actually, outside of first one was at the foot of Hollywood Hills. And just this past month, he moved to Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So no,
he's doing all right.
He had a couple of songs that he wrote.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that. So he spent one. I know my brother said. I talk to my brother every Sunday night, Sunday evening. Saturday, he was over his place.
You need somebody to, help
it.
open the door for you, you know?
That's what it is, yeah. So anyway,
Makes all the
so
difference.
hopefully he's hoping. Because,
Yeah, that's good.
because he graduated from Berkeley, Massachusetts,
Okay.
art school.
Okay. Right. Fine arts, yeah.
Brother's still waiting for the payoff.
Yeah, well,
See
keep
some
waiting.
kind of payday.
Keep waiting. You never see that. You never see that come back. And you could,
Colleagues,
well, at least yeah, let's see it pay off.
He had payoff, at least for him.
Right.
Okay, and,
Yeah.
you know, when he went to school.
Yeah.
John, who's out in the hall?
It's a tough field, though.
Is Dan out there?
Well, maybe this guy can help him out. If you really,
Okay.
Especially in that.
There we
field,
are.
you need somebody to help you.
Mary,
Get your foot
Dan, Vicky, we're set. We're set. Dan, we're gonna start the meeting.
Boy, am I tired.
He himself
At least I remembered to bring a change of shoes. The last time I went for my daughters from here.
Stay where you are, man. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No. Statement of publication?
Take notice that this agenda session meeting of the mayor and council being held on this 27th day of November 2017 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan. Here. Grillo.
Here.
Kilpatrick.
Here.
Lembo.
Here.
Melendez.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Okay, as I call out the ordinance, if you have a comment, please state it. 384-17, 385-17, 386-17. Communication and committee reports, Administration and Finance, Councilwoman Novak.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the minutes and departmental reports as listed on the agenda A, 1 through 4.
Second.
Next item.
Okay, I'd like the approval of the application, the applications for bingo and raffle licenses as listed under B, 1 through 4.
Oh, that's approved.
Is there a motion? To, any
Any
objection?
objections?
Okay, next item.
Under C, authorization to renew the following annual licenses for the calendar year 2018. Barber and Beauty Shop, Junkyard, Private Horse Stables, Temporary Trailer and Motel applications.
Any objection? Next item.
Okay, retirement notice received with the deepest regret from the position of CFO and Treasurer of the Borough of Sayreville, effective May 1st, received from Wayne Kranowski. We
There's a
regret-
lot of objection, but we
Yes.
understand. We
Motion to
understand.
receive and file.
Okay. Anything else, Councilwoman?
Other than that, I look forward to working with Wayne from January through May, and with starting the budget is ASAP.
Okay. Planning and zoning, Councilman Limbo.
Thank you, Mayor. Move the following minutes and reports be received and filed. Middlesex County Planning Board, minutes of October 10, construction officials report, zoning and code enforcement, and reports for the month of October, and fire prevention report for the month of October also receive and file.
Second.
Next item.
Also, application before the Township of East Brunswick for a bulk variance zoning change, 25 Cornell Drive, receive and file.
Second.
Oh, just,
Yeah,
any,
proximity to
is
town.
there a second?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman?
Other than that, progress, Mayor.
Thank you. Public safety, Councilman Grillo.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I move the following minutes reports be received and filed. The Board of Health Registrar and County Inspectors Report for the month of October 2017.
Is there a second? Next item.
Just two items. The first one is, some of you know, Rutgers has been working on a redevelopment plan for Route 35 in Morgan. We have some graduate students who've been spending this semester looking at different options for land use and transportation. I actually went and saw their draft presentation. They did a really great job, and they're going to be doing a public presentation on December 12th at 6:30 at the Morgan First Aid. And so I'd like Terry to publish that publicly so that my colleagues can attend. It's December 12th, 6:30 at the Morgan First Aid. They did a really, really great job. I think it's really innovative and interesting stuff. Certainly good food for discussion, especially as it relates to COA. So please, if you'd all join me, including the mayor as well. I think that's going to be a great opportunity. So everybody in TV land, please come out December 12th, 6:30, as well as my colleagues. The other item I wanted to discuss with the council is Councilwoman Kilpatrick at the last meeting brought up an idea of having a three-person subcommittee of the council meet with the Board of Ed regarding COA. concerned with their specific issues. I think this is a conversation we had sort of roundabout at the Melrose Town Hall earlier this month. But I think you're dead on with that. I think it's a really good idea. And I'd like to expand that opportunity to maybe put together sort of a COA oversight committee, which would be every committee, board, agency in the borough, and give them an opportunity to work together so that, just as a kind of odd example, let's say the library board says we've just built 2,000 houses or 500, whatever it is. They can say we need this amount added to our budget, or we need to provide these types of services. Because this program is going to go through 2025, COA.
Like an impact committee, like
an impact
COA
committee.
impact committee.
Yeah, and I think that this should be something where every single board agency has the opportunity to appoint one member. And so they can have, a lot of these groups don't have a voice when it comes to COA, but a lot of them will be affected. And so I guess we have now, a month or so before we have to start making appointments and things. I would like the council's approval for Mr. DuPont to research how we can draft some type of committee creation that would make this inclusive for all these different committees.
Any objection?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, yes and no. If it's gonna be in the form of an ordinance to do this, we don't have enough time until after the first of the year. We
Oh,
need
'cause
two
you need
meetings,
two
we only
meetings.
have one. So he can start looking at it, but we can't introduce it until January.
That's fine.
I'll meet with Mr. Frankel and go over the committee report.
Okay, yeah, I think we, obviously the earlier we can do it, the better. If it's not January 1st, that's fine. But I think, this is something that we need to at least create something that, we're all elected to 3-year terms, but this thing's going to last 8 years. So we should have the community on board with it. So I thank you for your support on that. And Mr. DuPont, if you have any questions about my idea, please give me a call.
All right,
We will discuss. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Public Works, Councilwoman Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following minutes reports be received and filed. The Public Works Supervisor's reports for buildings and grounds, parks, recycling, roads and sanitations, and garage services, all for the month of October 2017.
Second.
And, and our rent leveling board minutes of November 14, 2017 as
Is
well.
there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilwoman?
I just have, actually, I have two things. First, I have before me the Middlesex County Clean Communities newsletter. Like I said, this is the county Clean Communities newsletter, and the reason I bring this up is because our very own Elise Barone, recycling coordinator and just all-around fabulous person, is actually featured in this month's newsletter. She's featured with her article, which I have copies of to be disseminated around here and for the public, is the one with the Oscar the Grouch. I know you're probably thinking, why Oscar the Grouch? And that's because dating back to when Elise Barone was first named in charge of our Recycling Clean Communities Coordinator position, one of the things that she did bring forth was this Oscar the Grouch costume. And nothing says clean communities like a character that jumps out of a garbage can. But Elise has used this as her way to go around and kind of get conversations started, not just with little kids, but also with our senior community and just everyone that she meets. What's amazing about this 3-column article is it really sums up, in a nutshell, how lucky we are to have somebody like Elise working on our behalf. I did not know this about Elise, but it does feature that she actually majored in college in art, and she worked for a number of years as a teacher's aide for children with special needs. From there, she somehow found her way working with our DPW director, Bernie Bailey, who she credits a lot of her successes to. It's a beautiful article about how a woman can turn around and take a passion for something like recycling at home and making sure your plastics go in the right place, to getting us the grants that you hear me talk about all the time. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants that we receive thanks to her hard work all of the time and the group that she works with. So I just would like to take the time to tell you, please pick this up. Know that you have really great employees working for you. Elise, I thank you always for all the hard work that you do and all the people that are around you. And more importantly, I'm very grateful for our Oscar the Grouch costume, because it looks great in a nice colored newsletter. But thank you on behalf of everybody here and keeping our community clean. And with that, I only have one additional thing, since you did bring up our council school board subcommittee, Pat and Dan. I meant to send you an email today, but I hit a dead zone in school, and I know it didn't go through. But I would like for you to email me some dates between December 11th and December 15th, if possible. If that week doesn't work, we can look at a different date, a different time. But I'd like us to sit down and talk, so that way, once the reorg happens with the school board, I'd like to reach out to whoever that current president is so we can sit down and talk. I normally would like to reach out to them earlier, but with a little bit of a change to their board, I don't want us to have a fruitless meeting. I want to make sure that all the parties involved will be there. The 11th through the 15th, I'm thinking that would be good, because anything we discuss, we can bring on the 18th to our council meeting. And thank you, gentlemen, for both agreeing to be on that subcommittee with me. Other than that, progress.
Thank you. Recreation, Councilman Melendez.
Thank you, Mayor. Item A, the Water and Sewer, Recreation Director's Report for the month of 2017, received and filed.
Second.
Lastly, really quick, this Sunday is the holiday parade on Main Street, 6 p.m. Tree menorah lighting, and many of our local organizations will be invited to perform on stage. So again, that's 6 o'clock Sunday, Main Street, Borough Hall. And also December 10th at 12 and 2 p.m., Sarah Relay has their toy drive at Club Pure. There's a big session, so they actually broke it into two. So there's a 12 o'clock session and a 2 o'clock. And then lastly, the Sarah Rec Toy Drive is now open. Anyone interested in donating new unwrapped toys can deliver them to the rec office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and toys will be distributed on December 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. by appointment. With that, progress.
Thank you. Dan Frankel, Business Administrator's Report. Oh, I'm sorry. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Water and Sewer Director's Report for the month of October 2017 be received and filed.
Second.
Progress.
Anything else, Council
Progress.
President? Okay, BA's report, Dan Frankel.
Thank you, Mayor. In your packet is the tentative schedule that Terry has made up for our annual meetings. Can everybody just take a quick look at this? We've had a couple of changes just when we've observed. One was Veterans Day in November, and also because of the League Convention, and also the Monday after Thanksgiving. The only other date that's not a Monday that changes on the 29th of May, which is the day after Memorial. Is that right, the day after Memorial Day? Tuesday. So it'll be, is everybody okay with this schedule to publish for? Okay.
No. Let's just ask, though.
Okay.
First of all, the schedule that was put in your packet for January the 1st listed it as a Sunday and was brought to my attention that should be a Monday. So January the 1st is Monday, January 1, 2018. And as Mr. Frankel had referred to, our meetings in November, the League Convention starts the week of November the 13th, that Tuesday. So do you want to go ahead and have the meeting on the date that convention starts? I don't know how many of our governing body actually attends the League Convention. Do you want to leave it on the schedule? And if we need to change it beforehand, we can go ahead and amend it as we go along?
Right.
So we'll leave it set for Tuesday, November the 13th then. We'll leave our summer schedule for the the Monday in July 23rd and Monday, August the 20th, that's all right with everyone else. And again, if we need more meetings, we can go ahead and schedule as needed.
All right.
Any other changes, let me know.
Wayne
I
doesn't,
mean,
Wayne
you know,
doesn't
this
care.
what-
Wayne, do you care about that August meeting? Okay. so-
Have a dozen.
Okay, next item.
Authorization to add section 4.11 per diem employees to the employee handbook.
Next item.
Discussion of our ordinance promoting economic development for the food truck industry in the borough of Sayreville. So again, in your packet is something that we've looked at, that have been brought to our attention about creating the idea of having food trucks in the borough. I'd like you to take a look at it.
You'll also need to do the comparison to what we have on the books already called the peddler's license.
Well, the peddler's license. So there's a phenomenon, as we all understand it. We've seen the empanada truck all around the towns and different municipalities. They're not in one place. They move. It's like everything like a Mr. Softy. But again, that's not a peddler's. Like we only have two, I believe two.
That's a site-specific peddler's license.
Right.
We're talking site-specific, sorry, the
talking
mobile
a
license.
mobilized one.
Which goes from place to place, stops to make a sale, and moves on.
Correct. So I'd like you to take a look at that. It was brought to our attention. I think it's good for, I think it's good for economic development. If you want to have a discussion about it, it's up to people on the dais here, but it was brought to our attention.
Greg, I just asked Terry, so you just said there is a permanent location permit that we offer, and then there's a mobile, they can stop?
Yes.
So it's both?
That's correct.
No, we don't offer the permanent location anymore.
No, the permanent has
There's
to
some
be-
grandfathered in, but
That's correct. Those who have the site-specific are grandfathered in, and the only way that those licenses can be transferred is that they have to basically leave it in their will. They have to give it to a member of the immediate family.
but we no longer issue those licenses.
We no longer issue any new site-specifics. That is correct.
So as part of this discussion to consider issuing new site-specific ones?
Well, you might want to refer to the peddler's license ordinance that we currently have on the books and the information that was included in the packet on Friday, and see what tweaks you might want to make to it to better maybe accommodate these food vendors, these food trucks. If there's any change at all that might be necessary, there may not be.
One of the reasons this came up,
ago,
where it became site-specific, was we were beginning to get a multitude of really street corner vendors, you know, the Velvet Elvis, the flowers, and it was decided at that time that we didn't want that. And then we accommodated the two hot dog vendors that had been there for 3 or 4 decades. And then we just said no more because we just didn't want, we just didn't think it enhanced anything for the borough.
Yeah, we also had to tighten it up because they were selling more than just the hot dogs and ice cream and that sort of thing on the corner. They were selling socks and,
Right,
yeah, it
right.
became like English
It was
Town
a
Market
yeah,
on the
yeah,
corner. So at the time, the mayor didn't like the looks of that in our town and tightened up that ordinance so that merchandise would no longer be offered for sale.
Well, forgive me for not knowing the ordinance, but I know in New York City, the food permits are issued, but they are contingent upon approval of the property owner. Is that the way it works here as well?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody will take a look.
Okay.
You know. Dan, next item.
Authorization to appoint, and I'm going to amend this right now because actually we had somebody who actually pulled their name back. It's just one individual and a part-time person to fill the position of code enforcement officer due to the retirement of Frank Toth. The recommendations are in your packet. If you want to know who that person is, we can email me.
Next item.
We also need a discussion on an ordinance to regulate sports equipment and apparatus in our public roadways and rights-of-way in the borough of Sayreville from December 1st through March 31st. In your packet is an example of an ordinance. We do not have one at this point.
Are we getting complaints about the basketball hoops and the hockey nets?
We got to get them off the street.
Yeah.
We have
And
to.
For the snow, we
For
do.
snow.
But it's also an issue with our garbage trucks, our sanitation trucks and so forth, with trying to access sometimes where the garbage cans are located. Those arms, you don't want to be hitting them things.
But I'm saying right now, this is specifically related. I'm having just to try this for the snow aspect of it from December 1st through March 31st.
Put something together for introduction in January.
I would like to.
You know what I would ask, that we use the reverse 911 several times on this, because if you go to somebody's home and you give them a ticket for their kid playing basketball, it's the right thing to do, but it's the wrong message to send. So if we could come up with an ease-in plan using like reverse 911 and explain why we're doing it, and then maybe send it out with the water bills, just so that people understand that the whole reason we're doing it is so we can plow the street.
Right.
Do you have a count? Any idea how many we have?
Yes, as a matter of fact,
had a count,
we
didn't
did
you?
have a count. It came through with the last ride-through. I'll look it up, it'll take me a second. But I think it's a safety issue, though, seriously, too. Like I said, like now, they're portable things. Some of them are movable, and I would really hate to see somebody get hurt. But if we did a phase-in type of thing where, and then adopt for January, is that what you're saying?
We can't. do anything for now. I just wanted to,
We're saying for the
can't do
winter.
anything to the,
It won't
For
be
the-
official till the second meeting in January.
So can we also use our Channel 15 to make
Yes.
sure that that's out there and?
yes.
On the website.
I'll just,
I don't want to sound, we can't even keep the cars off the streets.
that's true.
And we've had a law on the book since 1997, I think. So I don't see that we're going to have much luck with this.
Anyway, you know, we have approximately 6,000 school-aged kids in town, and my own opinion is I would rather see them play basketball on the street in front of their house than get involved. I was just talking to Pat Lembo, and he told me his daughter graduated high school 4 years ago, and 5 kids from her class have already died from an overdose.
Oh,
Yeah.
listen,
And I assume they were good kids who were experimenting. I would rather have them play basketball.
Mayor,
there's a-
this is just to get them off
No,
of
no,
the
I
street for
understand, the snow,
snowstorms.
For the snow, but I don't want to, I can see it doing it seasonally, but not year-round.
I don't think that's what this is.
There's 139 basketball hoops upon our sanitation division making a list within,
Okay.
just recently. 139 that were
Well, maybe
counted.
winter time for the snow. We start with that.
Well, that's what
Start
this
with
is
that.
for,
That's
from
what it is.
December
It's
1st through March
strictly for-
31st. This wasn't for all year round.
Okay. Next item?
I think that's it, Mayor. Progress.
Okay. CFO's report, Wayne Kronowski.
Okay, the first two items are housekeeping items, a transfer resolution and the end-of-the-year resolution to cancel improvement authorization balance is no longer needed. And those balances are then used to offset any debt service that was issued against those improvement authorizations. The third item is authorization to engage Brian Hack to review an exterior pilot agreement and advise relative to certain terms. Brian Hack negotiated the first extension of it, and there's some questions about what the final termination date is on it. It's coming up to the end of their exemption period, and there's some questions on whether it's 30, the way it's calculated is 30 years versus 32 years. This is the first, the exterior was the first power generating plant in Sayreville, was known as North Jersey Energy on Journey Mill Road. And since then, it's changed hands a couple times, and it's in next year because they were merged, the different corporations were merged, and right now it's under next year. And there's some disagreement with the attorney down in Florida, and so we'd just like to have him clear it up. It's okay with the council.
Any objection? Anything else, Wayne?
That's it, that's all I have.
Thank you. Borough Engineers Report, Jay Cornell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item. We're receiving bids on December 5th for the Public Safety Complex parking lot improvements. We're asking if everything's in order. We have a resolution awarding the contract. That's your December meeting.
Okay.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Borough Attorney, Michael Dupont. No report, Mayor. Anything for executive session? Okay, public portion. Are there any questions or comments on any and all issues?
Mayor, can I just say something? I'm sorry, I misspoke before. I just realized that when I didn't intend for that to be all year round with the basketball hoops.
Okay.
I apologize for
No,
that. It took
that's
me a
fine.
minute. When I said
That's fine.
sanitation, I meant in reference to, sorry.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All in favor? All in
Second that
favor?
motion.
Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Okay. Okay.